Hey everybody, Zach Barnett here with Zach Barnett Guitar. Thanks for joining me today. So I wanted to talk today and give a lesson on bar chords, why they're used, why they're so important, and also they can be pretty tricky to play sometimes too. They can be intimidating and quite frustrating too sometimes. So I wanted to give some pointers to help you feel confident in playing bar chords, give you some practical advice to help you play bar chords easier and be confident in playing them. So first off, let's start out with what is a bar chord. Now, I've found that one of the easiest ways to explain what a bar chord is by looking at two common chords that you might be familiar with already. Let's look at the E chord for one, an open E chord. And then let's look at an F chord. So, as you could probably tell, the same shape is used for both E and F. But for the E chord, the bar is created with our nut up here at the top of the guitar. And when we use that same shape and move it up the neck to the F chord, we need to move that nut with us. So one of the most useful things about playing the guitar is knowing that there are different chord shapes that can move anywhere on the neck. And depending on where you put them, it will turn into a different chord. So that same E shape, when we moved it up a fret, it turned into an F chord. If we move that same shape up to the 3rd fret, say, this is a G note on the low E string. This 3rd fret, if you play it on that string, is a G. So if we bar our finger, make that nut basically, and put it across the 3rd fret, we can create a G chord, G major. Now the same thing is true not only for major chords, but for minor chords as well. So we could look at E minor, say. The open E minor chord, which is, you could think of the bar as our nut up here. And if we move that chord up a fret, we have an F minor chord. And the same thing is true. We could move that shape anywhere on the neck, and wherever the 6th string is, where we're barring, that's what that chord's going to be. So if our root note, that's what that's called. If our root note is, say, on the 7th fret, we can make a B minor chord, a B major chord, because this, our root note, is B. So we could see that bar chords are extremely useful on the guitar. They're shapes that can be moved anywhere to be whatever you're needing them to be, which is awesome. Now, the problem with that sometimes is how difficult those chords can be to form. So that's where this lesson comes in too. I don't want to just talk about how useful it is to find different chords and how easy it is to play different chords on the neck if you don't know how to form them properly. So let's talk for a minute. I'll zoom in really close so you could see maybe what's going on with my hand, and I'll give you some pointers to help make these chords as easy to play as possible. So let's talk just for a minute about forming bar chords. Now we want our index finger, it's going to be creating the bar, and we want it to be as close to the fret as we can get it. That's going to help these to be as easy as possible to ring out. Now on the back of the neck, the other important part with this bar is our thumb. And between our index finger and our thumb, we're kind of creating like a capo here. We have our anchor on the back that's helping us give pressure, and we've got this index finger that they're both working together to kind of create this capo on this fret. Now, an important thing to understand with this too is we don't want to just be pushing as hard as we possibly can. The goal with bar chords is we want to push just hard enough for all the notes to come through and ring through, but not any harder. And the reason for that, there's a few reasons for that actually. We, for one, want our wrists to be okay. If we're pushing really hard and really using tons of pressure, that's going to be hard on our fingers, it's going to be hard on our wrists, and it's going to create more pain for us to play, and that's not something we want. The other thing is that it's going to make it easier for you to move to different chords quicker. If you're using lots of pressure to clamp down on each of these, it's going to make your hands a lot more stiff, and it's going to be harder for you to move around. So you want to have your hand pushing down just hard enough for all the notes on the chord to be ringing through. Now, if you're still having a hard time forming these bar chords, there's still an alternate way to play them. And I would recommend learning this even if you can play the regular bar chord just fine. So this version is kind of like, I call it the Jimi Hendrix version because he played this way quite a bit. And what we're going to do, instead of playing our major bar chord like this, what we're going to do is we're going to shift this finger over, and then we're going to have our thumb wrap around, and it's going to be fretting this 6th string instead. So, and with a few of these, sometimes I leave this note off and use my thumb to mute, to both fret the 6th string and mute the 5th string. Sometimes I do that. You can also do it with the minor chord, where you're either playing it like normal and you have your index finger that's just barring these 3 notes instead of 6 now. That makes it a little bit easier to play. I found that the Jimi Hendrix version makes it a little bit easier to embellish different chords as I'm playing them using these fingers. So there's that reason for learning both versions. But if you're really struggling to play the bar chord with your full finger barring all 6 strings, that can be really difficult. Playing this Jimi Hendrix version of these chords might be a good alternative for you right now. So I specifically made this video on bar chords using an acoustic guitar because I've honestly found that playing bar chords is more difficult on an acoustic guitar than it is on an electric guitar. It can be really frustrating on an acoustic guitar to play bar chords, and very challenging. Now there's a few reasons for this. One of them is that acoustic guitars tend to have thicker strings than like an electric guitar does, which makes them harder to push down. And I've found that it seems like it's more common to have a high action or a high distance from the frets to your strings, a higher distance on acoustic guitars than on electric guitars. Now these things can all be changed. You can change to lower, lighter gauge strings, and that does seem to help. So that's the first recommendation I would give you, is if you're really struggling to play your bar chords on an acoustic guitar especially, consider trying lighter gauge strings until your hands get more used to it. I would also take your guitar in to a guitar tech and see if they can help you out to get your guitar set up so it's easier and more comfortable for you to play. Because nothing seems to kill motivation more than feeling like your guitar is really working against you. So I would say go talk to a guitar tech, see if you can get your strings at a good height for you, get string sizes that really work for your hands, and see if that helps. You can change the height of this bridge piece right here. This takes taking it out and sanding it down, which can be really intimidating because if you sand off too much, that's kind of a sucky thing to deal with. You can't put material back on it. So if you're not comfortable doing that, I would say talk to a guitar tech especially about that too. But your string height can come down is what I'm trying to tell you. If you're struggling on the acoustic guitar still, I would also give the advice to try playing on an electric guitar. So I have found that playing an electric guitar does tend to be easier than playing an acoustic guitar. I've found that I can play the electric guitar almost for an indefinite amount of time until I get bored, basically. Where playing the acoustic guitar, I can play until my fingers start to hurt, is what usually goes on there. So if you're struggling still, an electric guitar might be a great place to start learning this and having your hands get more familiar with playing these without them being taxed too much with all the pressure that you have to push to create bar chords. You can start getting more comfortable on an electric guitar, I've found. So give that a try Obviously, it's up to you. I found that the electric guitar is insanely versatile. It's an awesome instrument, and it's not just for metal. It's not just for rock or country or any of those things. It's for all different types of music. And I found that you can get an electric to sound pretty similar to an acoustic as well if you have the right setup and are using the right things. I wanted to end this video with 4 very common bar chords that I would recommend you practice on your own time. So we've talked about 2 of them already. We've talked about this, the major and the minor bar chords with the root note on the 6th string. And we know that that shape that we made will create the chord we're wanting based on what the root note is. So because this note, 1st fret on this low E string, because that's an F, that creates an F chord. Now we can move it up to this G note on the 3rd fret and create a G major chord. That's the awesome thing about bar chords, is we could put them anywhere on the neck to create the chords that we're wanting to make. Now you might be limited on just the 6th string being your root note location basically, and you might want a little more versatility to be able to play different chords. So that's why I wanted to throw in the 5th string as well. So you could start creating, say we have an A chord right here, but say we don't want to, that may not be the voicing that we want in our A chord. So we can go like to an open A chord and play it there. It sounds slightly different than that other version. So using this A chord, we're going to use our finger as the bar, kind of like this nut again, and we're going to start moving this chord shape up the neck to be different chords based on where we put it. So when we put it here on this 3rd fret, this note is a C. So this creates a C major chord, kind of like that C, but it sounds a little bit different. Again, it's a different voicing. Or we can move it up to this D note on the 5th fret and create a D major chord. A little bit different voicing than our other open D chord. So these 4 chords I wanted you to remember are the major and minor bar chords with the root notes on the 5th and the 6th strings. Now this may not be useful for you in remembering how to play these chords, but for whatever reason, it worked for me. So I'm going to just share it with you, and if it's helpful, great. If not, then you're welcome to disregard this. So when I was remembering the shape to play the major chord on the 6th string, that one came pretty easy for me. And I remembered that this same shape, if you scoot it over 1 string, that's the bar chord for the minor chord with the root note on the 5th string. So major, minor is basically, the same, just moved up. And then it's kind of reverse for minor. There's no note kind of in that in-between fret for the minor bar chord. And there's no note for the in-between fret for the major bar chord on the 5th fret. So it goes major, minor, minor, major. I don't know if that's helpful or not. It worked for me in remembering these when I was first memorizing these shapes and using them in different places. I would also recommend that you start placing them in different places on the neck and start learning some of these different notes, what they are, just so you could start identifying what these chords are instead of just, oh, that sounds good, but I have no idea what chord that is. It's useful to know, oh, that's an A chord because my root note for this bar chord is an A. And this major chord, that's a D because my root note, I know that's a D. And I'll do a video on that as well to help you learn the notes on the guitar easier. You don't have to memorize every note in every place on the guitar. That's absolute insanity. There's much better ways to do it. But I'll save that for another video. For now, thanks for tuning in. You made it to the end. I really appreciate you sticking around this long. If you have any comments about playing the guitar or playing bar chords that might be helpful for someone else, please leave them in the comments. We're all here to help each other out on our own guitar journeys.